Greetings, friends. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with a brand new episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. The show I do to celebrate the fact that tabletop gaming, and specifically the game format, the rules, tabletop role-playing games, past its 50-year mark. I mean, we talk about tabletop gaming, and certainly that takes into board gaming and wargaming, both of which are much more than 50 years old, and have been played in organized ways for much longer than 50 years. However, it was the start of tabletop role-playing game which kind of launched the modern hobby gaming movement, which has now grown to include much more, with different kinds of card games and computer games, land computer games. So I think about this show, right, because I want it to be more than just. It started out being just focused on the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, the first tabletop role-playing game by just about everyone's assessment, if not the first, very close to the first, and certainly the biggest one over the last half century. And it's kind of the hub around which hobby gaming has developed. The board gamings came in around, and lots of other things going on. So, why do I bother with this kind of hemming and hawing and caveating? I don't know, because I want to be inclusive. Anyway, this show is celebrating hobby gaming in all of its formats that are going on here after the half-century mark. And I usually often will have an interview guest. No guest tonight, I'll tell you that right now. You can probably guess by how much I'm rambling. No guest tonight, but when I have a guest, I will usually begin drawing a cartoon homage to a classic piece of gaming artwork, often tabletop role-playing game related. While we chat, I'll begin drawing that. And then I have other shows, like this one, which is a work-in-progress show, where I take one of those drawings as it sits and kind of spend some more time working with it to finish it off. And while I do that, I invite you to come and hang out with me, and I chat. I answer questions. Hello, David Schwartz. Thank you for popping in and saying hi. I'm glad you put a message out. I'll get to why in a second. So answer questions, tell stories of my time in the gaming industry. I've been working full-time in the gaming industry for the past 30 plus years. That's a while. Not all of 50, but it's a lot of it. And, of course, I also do cartooning and writing, so I've had an interesting life. I've also lived in Japan for a while, so I'm happy to talk about any of that. Any of it. And I like hanging out and chatting with you guys. And it also gives me some time to focus and do this art that I love doing so much. And so, David, I'm going to get to you now. Why am I so glad you left a message? Well, the reason I'm glad you left a message is that on Thursday last week, when I did my other show, for some reason, anything anyone wrote in the chat wasn't coming through. And I wasn't sure why, or whether I had an issue that I had to resolve, because it only happened once and I couldn't begin to track it down. So I had my fingers crossed that I would show up here, and when folks left messages, I'd see them, and I'd be able to say, oh, whatever that problem was, it seems to be gone. You leave a message that tells me that problem seems to be gone. And that makes me happy. Anyway, so that's what this show is about. This is a work-in-progress episode where I will be working on my cartoon homage to a painting by Gerald Brom. Usually just goes by Brom, or I guess classically, as an artist in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, he was just Brom. Now he's publishing books and other things. If you haven't read any of Brom's fantasy books, give him a shot. It mixes his writing skills with his artistic skills. And I think perhaps he decided he wanted to be this way. Perhaps his publishers insisted he get a first name. I can tell you from experience that publishers don't like one named authors as a rule. Just as no, they don't like the authors. They don't like to have to try and deal with one named authors. Their system is not designed to handle it. So Gerald Brom is how you'll probably find him most often these days. But a terrific painter, and one of the things he's most associated with in the gaming world was doing a lot of the fundamental work on the Dark Sun setting, which is back in the news because Wizards of the Coast announced recently that they're going to be bringing it back. I don't think Brom is doing any work with them now, but whoever is doing work on the new Dark Sun material is absolutely being influenced by the work that Brom did previously. So, this is one of Brom's paintings. It was a painting done for the original Dark Sun box set. It was used as a cover of a booklet inside the box set. It was the player aid card booklet. So that went along with the adventure that was inside the original Dark Sun box set. It was also used as the cover of Dragon Magazine issue 173. And it looks a little something like, you're saying, Stan, I want to stop talking, show us something. It looks a little something like this. Oh, yes, well, you see it up there. I'm going to take that off because I meant to switch things. I'm going to grab my iPad Pro. Now, I do all my drawing here on an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil and the app Procreate. And that's why I can tell you that here we go. This is it. So this is the painting that I'm talking about. That thanks to folks in the chat a couple of weeks ago, or last week, they helped me find out / remember that this creature is a Belgoi, Belgoi, Belgoi. I don't know where the accent is supposed to be on it. And like I say, this painting was used as the cover of a booklet and the cover of an issue of Dragon Magazine. So it may be familiar to you all. It might even have been the cover of a novel at one point. I don't think so, but it might have been. Those paintings that Brom did back in the day got a lot of... they found a lot of different uses for them. So, that's on the left. On the right, of course, is my cartoon homage in the shape it was when we wrapped up last week. I'd done the sketches. In fact, I can show you at the end of what do I have to do here? Right, I've got to turn that off, turn that off, turn that off, yes, and then turn on that and that. This, at the end of the first week, this is what I had. This was the pencil sketch stage of the drawing, and that looked great. Last week, I went in and did the line art. I say pencil sketch. This is all electronic, but this is the level it would be. And the next phase, the line art, is what I normally would call inking, if it was physical media, and that's what we wound up with here. I also, at the end of the show, made a second copy of it and kind of cleaned it up, because right now you can see through all the layers. I'm going to add color in this week. That's what we're doing this week. I'm going to be laying in the flat colors and maybe more, depending on how much time it takes. But I laid in some solid whites so you couldn't see through all the layers at once, and turned this into a coloring page. Which, if you are a subscriber to this show's free newsletter, which you can get to at 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com, then you got a copy in your email of that coloring page for you to use for your own purposes. And if you sign up, you can still find it in the archive. So I do this for. I started doing this earlier this year. I started making sure that for every homage that I worked on, when I got to this stage, I made a coloring page of it. And I think eventually I'm going to go back and clean up most of them and maybe make a book of it or a PDF or something. I don't know. But here we go. 50 Years in the Dungeon.substack.com. That'll get you the newsletter, which tells you who the guests are coming up and gives you some behind the scenes information and gives you access to things like the sketch version of a drawing and the coloring book version of a drawing and the final version before anyone else in the world gets to see it. And of course, chat with me. That's fun. All right. Let's get into this. I'm going to start by turning off. Well, I'm going to start by creating a second group in here. I'm going to create a group like this. I'm going to turn it off so all that background stuff disappears, and all I have is the main character and the foreground. And I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to close this quickly and come back to it. The reason I do that, I've talked about this before, is because I don't use one of those drawing gloves, and because I do my work on a tablet that is touch sensitive, and because I'm working quickly and trying to do two things at once, like talk to you and draw and not give 100% of my attention, sometimes I will inadvertently step backwards. Like put my fingers on the board and it will undo one or more steps. When it undoes something like add a new layer, that means I'm drawing on the wrong layer, and that can have really bad repercussions. So if I close the file and reopen it, it locks in and it can't undo past there. Hello, Dale Donovan. Thank you for coming in. Good to see you again, my friend. All right, so we are going to do this. We're going to start with the skin tone on the Belgoi. And so it seems to be basically the underlying layer is white, right? Is white with a bluish shadows. Now, you'd think, all right, well, I can just start adding blue shadows because it's already white. But it's not. It's not white. It is, in fact, just see-through. In fact, if I turn out, see now we see background color. If I turn off the background color, which is white, you'll see that right now, it's nothing. There is no color there. And so if I'm going to do some painting and I want this to be in front, anything that seems to be white, you got to make sure you make it white. That's part of working digitally, because if you ever take your image and put it on some background color other than white, that's the color it'll be. So if I do this and I just start adding the blue shadows on our Belgoi because he looks like he's white. If I were to drop it on pink paper, his skin would be pink. And we don't want that. Also, since this is a multi-layered piece, when I did the background, that kind of orange, the orange wasteland and the yellow moons hanging in the sky, anywhere I didn't actually add the white, that's what you would see. So this guy would look like he had orange and yellow skin with blue highlights. And we don't want that. So the first thing I need to do is make the skin, give it a flat white for me to work with. Hello, Chris Andrew. New caption pitch for this piece. Maybe I'd have better luck fishing near water. Yeah. So it's tough. If I were to take my stylus, my iPad, my Apple Pencil, and I set the color to white, and I start drawing on here, well, you don't see anything. I can show you by turning off the background that I did add something, but I can't see what's happening if I'm drawing in white. So I'm actually going to turn on the blue, and I'm going to color everywhere that I want to have white. I'm going to color it blue first, and then I'm going to turn that blue. I'm going to replace the blue with the white, and that way we will have it all filled. I don't know that everyone came in here for a big night of art lessons, but that's what we're starting with. As always, I'm totally open to chatting about whatever you guys are interested in hearing. What do you guys think about the announcement that Wizards is going to be bringing back Dark Sun after so many years? It's been quite a while since Dark Sun was available. It as a setting had some challenges, and the fact that, slavery is a big part of it, and some of the post-apocalyptic bits, and some of the style of let's say, I love Brom's art. It's super popular with a lot of people, but there's some people who don't like it, and it was a little it had detractors, and so it just became one of the complicated pieces of the puzzle. So Wizards, for a long time, just kind of stayed away from it. There really wasn't a lot. The people that loved it, and it didn't really seem to fill a niche that was going unserved and have an obvious audience waiting for it. It was kind of a strange setting. And we know these days that the larger a company is, the more risk averse they are, and the more they really only want to touch something if they have a clear indication that they know there's an audience and they know they can sell to it. And Dark Sun, its biggest drawback from that perspective is it was because it's so different. There are no comparatives. There were very few comparatives. See whether it's a good idea to sell more Dark Sun. And so Wizards decided for quite a long time not to, just to do other things which had a higher probability of finding an audience, of having an audience. Well, not just finding an audience, of having an audience waiting for it. And say the lowest hanging fruit is what the larger the company is, to say the more risk averse they are, the more they want to make sure that what they're doing has a very high probability of not just being profitable, being really profitable. Chris says, I'm not familiar with Dark Sun, but the trailer they released with it looked cool. And he's talking about with the announcement at Gen Con. Dale says, I think there was a 4E setting book. I think you're right. I think there was a 4E setting book for Dark Sun, or at least something with it. An adventure or a group of adventures. I did not play a lot of 4E, and I certainly did not buy a lot of 4E products. That was while I was working in Southern California, and I didn't have a group that was interested in it. So while I kept myself abreast of what was going on, I was not actively involved. And again, because I had a full-time job, I was not doing freelancing. So it was not an important part of my career plan to stay on top of it, because I couldn't have done any work on it anyway. David Schwartz says he was a fan in the 90s. The new trailer looked a bit too extreme. What do you mean by that, David? Too extreme in what ways? I mean, that was, one of the knocks against uh, Dark Sun to begin with in the 80s was it was a little extreme compared to all the other D&D settings. It definitely was striking out to trod new ground, and the so many of the characters on the covers were wearing very little because it's this wasteland setting, and so many of a lot of the costumery had was called out for having kind of a kinky kind of style to it. All right, so that's that. I think I'm going to do the same thing for these skulls while I'm at it. Although, again, the skulls are much more gray, but the underlying color that we want to work with is going to be white. So I'm going to do the same thing for them. Bear in mind that I don't need to, when you're working digitally like this and you just want to lay down a big flat color, you don't have to be mindful of any of the interior lines or where individual pieces in the drawing, where these skulls overlap. This is just one big piece of white that's going to cross both of these skulls. So I'm just drawing it as one shape. All right, so there we go. Chris Anderson is a big fan of Gamma World, and likes the idea of post-apocalyptic settings. Dale also a fan of Gamma World. I also am a fan of Gamma World. One of the interesting, kind of switch around the subject a little, but one of the interesting things about Gamma World, or again, as a publisher, one of the challenging things about Gamma World is there have been 2 or 3 distinct takes on Gamma World. In fact, and just kind of look at it as 2. There is the kind of serious take on it, where it's a post-apocalyptic world where you're fighting for survival. And then there's kind of a goofy take on it, where there's mutants, and if you stand too close to a nuclear reactor, you might grow wings. Whereas in the serious take, if you stand too close to a nuclear reactor, there's a good chance your character's just going to get sick and die. Yeah, 7 editions. 7 editions that have flopped back and forth between interpretations. I think the history of Gamma World is very interesting from that regard. It is each era, every time it goes away, the people that bring it back kind of have a 50-50 role, whether they want to bring back the last version or go, that last version got it wrong, we'll go back to the original version, or kind of stylistic version. And people say, no, not that, we're going to go back the other way. And so you see these different takes on it over the course of time and over the course of editions. David Schwartz says to the too extreme question, you don't remember the original art ever going so far with the gore. Yeah, well, that certainly is a modern thing. We in the 80s and early 90s, you couldn't. You absolutely couldn't. You could not push that gore envelope. And it was implied that there was a lot of horrific things going on, a lot of people being tortured, and a lot of messy deaths, but you couldn't show that. And so there's kind of one of those interpretation things. Does that mean that as you reinterpret it for the 2020s, that you should stick to that level? What happened in the 90s, what you could show, only show what you could show in the 90s? Or do you take what the material was saying and say, all right, well, let's show it the way we'd show it now. Right? If this is horrible and people are torturing each other and things are getting rent around, there's going to be a lot of blood and gore. And the audience wants that. Or doesn't. Creative decisions. Alright, so here we go. I've now colored in everything that really ought to be white and made it blue. But if I come back to the white and I take this whole thing and I put on alpha lock, which means it'll only draw where I've already drawn, and I fill the layer, it's now all white. Now, it looks like I haven't done anything, but again, if I turn off the background color, we can see it's all solid white now. In fact, a little bit I didn't want. There we go. So now we've got a base white color to work with. Turn off the alpha lock, turn everything back on, and let's go. I'm going to do, you start doing these coloring things by laying in what I've already said as the flat colors, which is you just put a single color for everything. I say this Belgoi's skin is going to have a lot of blue shading. As we can see in the drawing, it's mostly in some amount of shadow, which is shades of blue. But the flat color is white. I got to add the flat colors for these other bits. Now, I'm looking at the cowl and cloak. The cloak is clearly brown. The cowl seems black, dark. I think I'm going to go for a very dark brown. So the brown for the cloak is going to be about like that. Let's start there. Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, David, and it's a little, it's an interesting. In part, it's a taste issue. Do you want it to maintain that kind of? It's looks like a PG-13 apocalypse, right? We'll tell you it's a terrible apocalypse and horrible things happen. But we'll never show you anything that would take if it was a movie or a TV show, take it higher than PG-13. Or, in fact, whatever level it is, when you're the creative director or the producer or whatever, whoever's got the job for making the decisions about the intellectual property, you've got to make that decision at the beginning. If you want to have everything conform to what you were hoping, you got to decide what is this rated. How much violence, how much gore, how much nudity or sexuality is the baseline, and how far can you push it? And the Dark Sun that was premiered at Gen Con definitely is pushing the envelope more than the Dark Sun of the 1990s would ever have been allowed to. Visually. Again, as I say, I don't think that it pushes it farther than the setting described or intimated. Maybe intimated is the better word there. So then that opens that big question of, are they pushing it too far, or are they seeing the vision through? And a lot of that comes into one's personal taste. Michael in chat, good to see you, my friend. He says, Gamma World was also the game from TSR WotC in the experimental one with the game mechanics. So Gamma World, the box set that they put out in the early aughts or the middle aughts, which was kind of a, it very much was a 4E style. Uh, it came out after Dungeons and Dragons Fourth Edition, and it played with those kind of mechanics. And in fact, I would say that it really showed how those mechanics could sing. Right? I think the best product that Wizards produced with those basic mechanics was probably Gamma World, the Gamma World box set. All right, let's see. So now we got two kinds of brown here for that cloak. And the question becomes one: do I want to use that same brown for the dark? So do I want to use the same brown that I've got on the cowl on, say, the leg straps or the wrist buckler? And I think the answer is yes. I very often try to. I mean, I'm not a painter, right? So my decisions are uh, often based more on what would be helpful for an animation than what would be good for a painting. And what's often good in animation is to have reuse colors as much as possible. An animation or a comic book. So I think I will make a decision to reuse these colors, even though I don't really need to. Let's see what else we have. Dale says, I love the combination of those two tones. Goofy, but also deadly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the. I think that the people who like the goofy Gamma World are more likely to like the deadly Gamma World, and then just uh, make goofiness appropriate. Then the people who like deadly serious Gamma World are likely to say, "Okay, we'll use the goofy stuff, and maybe just we won't act that way." The people who like the serious stuff, and it's not just Gamma World. I can tell you as a cartoonist, one of the challenges that um, haunted tabletop role playing games, as far as I'm concerned, for most of the time I've worked in it, is the concern of being taken seriously was so strong that goofiness was not allowed anywhere near it. There's no room for a cartoon, for goofy illustrations or cartoons of our serious game. And again, I kind of get, not even kind of, I get the business reason for that, but I disagree with it for a lot of reasons, not the least of which being, uh, I want work doing goofy stuff. All right, now in this case, do I want the loincloth to be this same color or not? I'm not sure about that. I think I need to draw it in to decide. I think the answer is probably yes. Because in the painting, it's definitely darker, but I think yes. I do want it to be the same color again. And so it shall be. have a little sip and come back and see what's going on in the chat. Chris Andrews says, in Gamma World, there's a giant mutant rabbit creature called Hoop. Yes. I remember we split the party when my brother's PC came back. He told us the character was just shooting some hoops. And that's the kind of joke that one group of Gamma World fans would love, and the other group would say, This is why you're ruining the game. Lamasu Rex, hey, how you doing? I heard they were getting rid of slavery in Dark Sun, the most unambiguous evil to oppose. Yeah. Well, is it the most it's pretty unambiguous. There's a lot of unambiguous evil in these settings. You know, one of the joys of role-playing games is that you can make of it what you want. But one of the worries for a publisher, particularly in a litigious society like the US, is the worry about what are people going to, what have I clearly, what have, maybe not clearly, what have the things I've said leave open for someone to misinterpret in a way that I'm uncomfortable with. Anything you... Because once the players have it, they can do what they want with it. And anytime someone can come back and say, well, your book says this, therefore, this horrible thing which no one ever intended. And, on the one hand, the reasonable answer to that is, okay, no, you're twisting that and stop it. But like I say, in our litigious society, and particularly not even just litigious, in our society where people who are looking for justice, and people who have been wronged in the past, and people who are sensitive about materials don't want to see what you're publishing be open to the things that are bothersome to them. And in fact, we definitely are in an era when people are voting. It's always been true, and I've always advocated voting with your dollars, right? If you don't like a thing, if you don't like what a thing says, if you don't like what it represents, don't give it money. That's what you should do. And so we're in an era when a lot of people are finally kind of taking that for real and saying, you know what, no, if you're going to do this thing I don't like, I'm not giving you money. And Wizards, of course, wants as many people's money as possible. Don't we all? But so they want to avoid doing things which are likely to trigger that reaction from any significant portion of the audience. And that's why, they present slavery as an evil to be opposed. But it still has that problem. Well, you take the slavery out. Because you can, having bad guys grab someone and hold them against their will and force them to do things is one thing. Saying that an actual culture and the way your world works is this is an accepted process is a different thing. So you could still have evil characters enslaving their captives. That can still be in the game. But what you can't have is the act of taking slaves is an accepted part of this society, and it exists in the game, and you're not fighting someone who is taking captives and holding them as slaves. You have a world where that happens in this area. Unless the point of your game is to overturn that whole country, that whole society, and put them on the right path, you've just created a part of the world where this is accepted, and therefore you open yourself up to that problem that I was just talking about earlier. Dale says, Gamma World is pulpy sci-fi. Radiation gives you powers. Well, some Gamma World is pulpy sci-fi. Again, that's where we have this division among Gamma World fans. Some Gamma World fans just that they do not want it to be pulpy sci-fi. They want it to be apocalyptic sci-fi, shall we say. Without the pulpy to some people, some people who like it and some people who hate it. Pulpy to some people means cheesy isn't the word that I'm looking for, but non-serious. Again, the biggest thing in all of these things I'm saying is to some people. And what different people are willing to accept and put up with. Alright, well, that's looking good. I think so. His eye is red. Here's one of those artistic interpretations. So in the original, the eye is very tiny and red. I'm making it much bigger. So which world of Dark Sun and which version of Gamma World are the ones you... I'm not asking you this so you'll answer it. I'm beginning a thought like this. Which version of Gamma World, which world of Dark Sun is the one that you want to play? And does what Wizards of the Coast... So Wizards of the Coast wants their product to be able to have the most number of people say, yes, I can get my version of... This book represents my version of it. That's what they want, mostly. It's the most number of people to answer the question, does this represent... Can you get your version of it through this? The answer is yes. Which means that almost everyone's answer will, to some extent, be filled with, I've got to tweak it a little. But, so no one is perfect, or very few people are perfectly happy. But the most number of people possible say, yes, I can easily tweak it to make it do what I want it to. Lamasu Rex says, even as most serious RPGs are kind of goofy. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I would agree with you that most people's games, at their heart, are kind of goofy, but there are people that play role-playing games in a really, really serious way, and there are professionals who use it for very serious uh, reasons. Very very serious uses. And I don't think that it's fair to say that at its heart, role-playing games are goofy. I think that it is fair to say that at their heart, they can be. They make it easy to be goofy, but it's all up to the group's interpretation and how the group puts to use the tools they have. Let's see. Hello, Matthew Snow. Glad to see you. Glad to see you. New pitch from Chris Andrew. 300 degrees out here, and I still can't get decent color. It's yeah. I kind of look at the Belgoi and I think, all right, well, I could not put on my SPF 3000, but if I do, I'll just turn into a cinder. My choices are pasty white or fry to a crisp. Was Gamma World part of Eternity? There was a Gamma World version of Eternity that was released, yes. Now here's a weird thing. I was looking at this before. The tip of this spear and the tail of this spear are kind of pink. I don't know that I want to make them pink. All right, not it's magenta. It's a pale magenta, but they look really pink. And certainly one of the interesting things about Dark Sun is the lack of very much metal. Like I've put here, these clasps and these studs sure seem like metal, but there's not a lot of metal in the world of Athos. Which is one of the reasons why we've got the magenta spear tip. It's probably if we were to look up what the stats said about the Belgoi and what their weapons they use, is probably some kind of stone or coral or cultivated plant. Let's see. I'm thinking of a Ravenloft campaign with a new core. Going off on a different direction here. I don't see if we got there on a link. No alternative version of Gamma World, despite Dale's urgent suggestion. Wasn't there? God, I feel like there was. Huh. I believe you, Dale. It feels like there was. Maybe it was in one of the magazines? Maybe it's just something we talked about and I think was real because we talked about it. Mauve. Yeah, mauve. It's a it's a kind of magenta. David Shore says, I seem to remember the Thrycreen used pink crystals in their weapons. Could well be. That could very well be what's going on there. Dale says his favorite version of Gamma World, the original and 4th edition that Bruce Nesmith did. Okay. Michael says he always gets Amazing Engine and Alternity mixed up. They are, yeah. I can't say I get them mixed up, but I see that's in the same, broadly the same era. I loved the concept for Amazing Engine. I used to, whenever one of the rule books actually came with all the Amazing Engine books, all the setting books came with a 32-page mod, like a size of a regular D&D module. That was the rules. Those were the core rules, and the book was all the world interpretation of those rules. But the basic game was in that 32-page book, and I thought that was a brilliant idea. I don't. I'm going to say this, and I know Zeb. I know Zeb Cook, and I know occasionally he will watch some of these. So I'm sorry, Zeb. I did not like the game. Can't please everyone all the time. I didn't like the game, but I love the concept. And some of those world books are really super good too. All right, so here we go. Let's find ourselves what color of mauve. Let's go with that. That's farther away from pink. It still looks pretty pink when you draw it. Let's go with a fainter version, which makes it look even more pink. Yay. But all of this is going to get shadowed and toned up, so these are just the basic flats. Basic flat colors. Alright, now I need to decide. Alright, this whole outcropping is going to become. It's this weird, like there's bone and moss growing on it. The whole thing has a very strange shade about it. I think I'm going to go with a greenish gray as the flat color. I got to figure out. Now, I did the skulls we saw earlier. I dropped the white color onto the skulls. I didn't do any color on the spikes. So I'm going to have to make a decision there about whether it's going back and adding them as a base of white too, or another color. And I think that decision is not going to happen until I see what this green looks like when I'm done putting it on the whole of the outcropping. I think it's going to be a lighter version of this grayish green. That's that's what I think I'm going to want to do. What I actually will want to do, we'll find out in a little bit. Let me see. Got Gamma World book, and I think it was published during the WotC period. Favorite version of Gamma World are the original. Okay, I read that part. Bum bum bum. Yeah. So as I was saying, I would carry those I always got as many copies as I could of the Amazing Engine rule set, again because I thought it was such a good idea, and it was worth using as inspiration for how to do something, if not uh, exactly what to do. Again, at least for my taste, and I loved some of those uh, world books, some of the Amazing Engine world books, Fairy Queen and Country and Magitech, and um, uh, what was the one? What was the name of the Weekly World News style one? You know what? I know what it was. My brain is not giving me the noun. Ah, it was the term for that kind of newspaper that some it's not, and I don't mean the well, it became the generic term for newspapers that uh, printed utter rot, but it comes from the term for newspapers that fold and unfold at a certain size. What the heck is the word? Tabloid. God, I was stuck with starting with a P in my head, and I knew I was wrong. Tabloid. Thank you, Dale. Once again, you have done me a service. I have, over the years, monkeyed around with several different iterations of games that are inspired by the Weekly World News and tabloids. Um, let's see, it's time for me to put this back in because I have to make sure that I don't drain. We're down to 57%. Let's let it sit for a second, charge up a little. Let me come over here, take that off screen for a second. Tabloid. Rob King did Tabloid. Oh, well, that explains one of the reasons why I like it so much. Awesome guy, that Rob King. Oh, so what do I want to talk about while we're letting the pen recharge a bit? I want to talk about. I think I brought this up last week. I'm pretty sure I brought this up last week. I'm getting ready to launch a crowdfunding um, campaign to. Yeah, I know. Why would I forget that word? I'm getting ready to launch a crowdfunding campaign to print a children's book from with one of my stories that I did in the past as an October daily drawing challenge. I made a story about a character that I call Little Witch Willow. Did this back in 2020. I did it again in 2021 with a separate story, and it did very well. I will be putting the original Little Witch Willow pages up one at a day in the month of September during the crowdfunding thing. So you'll be able to see the story. Little Witch Willow's Big Day is the name of it, and it's getting ready to launch. Right now there is a pre-launch page on BackerKit. that you can get to if you go to littlewitchwillow.com. That'll take you to the Backer Kit page, and you can sign up. Right now, there's a button there that says "Count Me In." I always worry about that "Count Me In," because a lot of people, I think, look at that and think, "Oh, I have to give you money now, huh?" That's not. It's not ready to take your money. It can't take your money now. But what that does is put you on the mailing list, so you'll get email as the campaign, when the campaign launches, and anytime I send out a broad kind of, here's how things are going, until you unsubscribe from it. So if you don't want to get those, it's very easy to bottom of the email, click unsubscribe. I don't care anymore. But right now, it would be super helpful to me if I could get as many people as possible to show their interest in the Little Witch Willow project, even if you're not going to buy it. If you're hanging out here with me today and you're watching me draw, you are absolutely the kind of person that wants to go and click the Count Me In button, because it costs you nothing, and it helps me to get my drawings out there to the world. I presume if you're hanging out here, unless you're hanging out here just to yell at the screen because you hate me so much, then you're not the kind of person. Don't go there, don't click anything. But if you like what we're doing here, if you're having fun, please go to littlewitchwillow.com, click the Count Me In button. I promise you it won't count you in for anything other than receiving an email or two. After which point you can very easily unsubscribe if you don't want it. But I bet you're going to want it. Yes, so the book is gonna. It's all done. Like I say, I did the original story 6 years ago. It's been sitting in my files ever since, and now I'm just finally getting around to trying to put it into a print format, and that's what this is all about. It's a pretty straightforward. I just over the weekend put together the campaign. It's going to be very straightforward. There's not a lot of options. You can order a PDF version. You can order a print version. You can order a print version with a signature and a sketch. And you can order the print version with signature and sketch and a bundle of 4 stickers. That's it. Those are the choices. I don't even have a super high crazy. I probably should think of a super high crazy one, so that a few people can sign up for that. An important part of doing these crowdfundings is give people the option to just throw a bunch of money at you. I don't know what I'd give for that. Right? There's not original art to sell. There's not a lot of things. I'll have to come up. It might just be a personal call thing, or I don't know. When it's done, I'll invite you to a Zoom call where I read the story. Here's the thing: no words to read. But it might be an invitation to a closed off Zoom call to talk about the project and to look at it and other crazy things. Those of you who come here, I'll talk about anything, anytime. So, not that I'm trying to stop you from throwing a lot of money at me if you want, but you don't really need to. It doesn't take a lot to get access to me. But littlewitchwillow.com, it is in the preview stage right now. It is going to launch. It is set to launch on September 1st. I've got to check back. There was a little miscommunication, so I think right now they have it set for September 10th. But it'll be September 1st. It's going to run for the month of September. It's going to be part of a thing they're doing on Backer Kit called Printtopia, with a lot of people who are making books and printed material, printed things all at the same time. I'm going to be one of them, and we'll go from there. So there you go. Michael says, custom sketch drawn as a selfie with Little Witch Willow and the Pledger. Yeah, maybe a digital drawing like that. Sure, that's that's a fine thing to put up there as a high end overcharge people. So you wanna you got more money you know what you do with, or you really just want to throw money at what I'm working on because you like it so much, or you like me so much. Really, it all does depend on you having money to throw around. Sure, that sounds good. Good suggestion, Michael. I think I may take that up. All right, have another sip here of my soda. Say littlewitchwillow.com one more time, and then turn that off. Come back over to here, where everything is just as I left it. And the Apple Pencil is now up to 93%, so we're going to start drawing again. Let's get back to it. Let's see what else is going on here. Complete non sequitur question. Can I think of any RPG that doesn't have basic attributes for characters, like strength, dex, and intelligence, and etc.? I know that there are a bunch. I mean, there's some that simplify it so much that it's just mind and body. Right? There's a lot that do that, or mind, body, and spirit. But beyond that, there are some where it doesn't even matter what your stats are. I can't think of any off the top. I can't think of what they are, but I've certainly looked at some where you don't have physical stats, or you have just the things you can do. Everything's a flat roll. Like everyone has. Certainly, I've run games, sample games with people just to get them to understand what role playing is, where you didn't have any stats at all. You just had a 50% chance to succeed at whatever you wanted to do, whatever you were doing, 50% chance. And if you were the type of character that was appropriate to, you got. In fact, you know what? I do know one. I have a game like that. What am I talking about? That's kind of the hook on. Where is it? Oh, did I have a copy that's not in the bag? Oh, do. I created a game that I was playtesting last year at. Yeah, here we go. This is it. So let me come back to the. No, hit the wrong button there. Come back to the Just Me version. I have a game that I called Epic Tales. This is the alpha playtest version. Your character is made up of an occupation, a specialty, and a weakness. You don't have any stats like that. You pick your occupation, and the assumption is that you are good at what your occupation allows you to do. Basically, you have a I don't know how. I don't want to get too deep into what the rules are. They're very shallow. Which is pretty shallow. The idea is it's a super fast game that you can pick up and play with anyone. Play for a session and you're done, and then you can make a new character next time, or play your same character another time. But you are. The idea is that you are good at everything with your occupation. You are better than everyone else. Has this percentage chance to doing it. It's not percentage based, but everyone has this chance. If it's your occupation, you have a better chance. You're just better at it because it's your occupation. The presumption is you are good at it. You have a specialty, which could be part of your occupation, or it could be some other thing. Say you're a doctor, but you used to be, you got into it by being a Marine, so you've also got military stuff. So if you're something that falls in your specialty, you also get another step up. So if you're ordinary, you have this chance. If you're a doctor, you have this chance. Or if you are a Marine, if it's shooting, say, you get this chance. But I don't know why. If there's a situation where your occupation and your specialty come in, you're even higher. And if you have a weakness, you're down a peg. And that's it. Those are the basic rules for how what dice you're rolling and what your chances are. Doesn't matter if you are especially strong. If you want that to matter, then make that your specialty. Your specialty is I'm ripped and I do things that require raw strength. I'm better at that. You get that. Or I've studied the occult. Anything that has to do with the occult, I've got a better chance of knowing it. Take it up. Anyway, that's how Epic Tales works. So there's a game like that. It exists, and I wrote it. It's not the first that's done that. I mean, let me just say that. And I just can't, off the top of my head, remember what some of the others are. But aren't you glad you asked? And I got to answer with, I'm so smart. I often worry about that when my answer is, why, yes. Feels like a commercial. Is there such a thing? Does it exist? Why, yes, and I have it for you right now. I play tested that at GameholeCon last year. Ran a couple of sessions. I tried to test it at Page last year, and absolutely no one signed up for my events. So, it kind of has sat on my desk in that form. I printed up about 50 of those sheets that I just showed you, these alpha test versions. So if you played in it, I gave you a copy of the rules that you could take home and play with people at home, and no one really seemed to care much. So it's sitting there. I still like it. I still want to do more with it. It's on my list of things to work on, but that list is long, and it's now rolled off being near the top, and it's going to have to wait until until things shift around in my head where that's what I want to focus on, because I have too many other things right now, which are, if I have free time, I'm working on this. But Michael, having said that, if you drop me a line, I will be happy to send you a PDF of Epic Tales if you want to see it. Michael says you were sketching out a system that was all skills with no basic attribute underneath them. Yeah, I'm sure that sounds like. I'm sure I've seen a game that has something like that, but I would love to know. I'd love to see your version of it. The challenge, one of the challenges that comes along in game design like this is the more you worry about detail, the more you want to give options, the more regulation you kind of need, the more mechanical regulation. The more you're willing to say all these things are basically the same thing, the more you can get away with a system that doesn't have those numerical and attribute style delineations, right? Why does a school teacher doing this exactly the same as a doctor doing this, exactly the same as a soldier doing this? Why? Because I'm willing to accept that level of sameness, that level of I can't think of the word I want to think of right now. So much fun when the brain doesn't want to give you the noun you're looking for. Um, and the more you want to add the specificity in, the more rules you need, because it. I mean, the other problem is that if you want to make it so that something is, it's, you have to do a certain thing to be good at something. What you're really saying is anyone who doesn't do that is bad at it. And if you know, I get the idea that you want the soldier to be good at shooting. Again, is the very generic version. The fighter to be good at hitting something with swords, but you wind up with some of the problems that that you see people complain about in games where the only person that can pick locks is the thief. And but if you make it so everyone can pick locks, then the thief no longer has something that makes him special. It's kind of the game design uh, balance that you're toying with. You're trying to find a good answer to. David Shepard says, "Very interesting. I don't recognize this piece. Is it? This piece was in the original Dark Sun box set. It was on the cover of one of the booklets inside. The booklet was called the Player Aid Cards. It was also then used as the cover of Dragon Magazine number 173. Conundrum is not the word I was looking for, but it is a good word for what I was talking about. It's not the specific word I was trying to think of, but that doesn't mean it's not a good word for what I was trying to say, because it is. All right, once again, I'm going to add a new layer, which means I'm going to turn it off and turn it on again so I don't lose that layer. Now is the time to start thinking about these blues on the skin. So, I'm going to figure out what kind of blue is that. I think that's the kind of blue we're talking about. All right, so once again, the way to do this, I guess don't talk about this a lot, but when you're doing colors, when you're painting in physical media, you should start with the lighter colors. Start with the lightest colors and then add darker colors on top of them. Because it's easier to darken something up than it is to take the darkness away as you're going around. That having been said, that you don't need to do it that way when you're working digitally, but uh, but I find it actually is still a super helpful way to think about it. So I'm going to start basically with a second flat. I'm thinking about my shading layer as a second flat color. Now, I'll tell you one of the things, I want those teeth to have a different feeling. So I'm actually going to put a yellow on the teeth so they don't feel like they're the same color. You know, I often talk, particularly on the Thursday show, about when you're dealing with things that are white. Um, Everything that is white has the same base color, white. But the way you get interpretations, the way you get different kinds of white, is by what color you use for the shadow. And different colors have different implications. So if you do something with a blue, particularly a light blue, it feels like a clean white. And this guy's, that powder blue, it seems very like a very clean white, despite the fact that he lives in this apocalyptic setting. Kind of eerie how clean it is. But if you put the yellow on it, like there, those teeth just look like a different color. Where mostly they are still the same white. Right? Let me switch here. This white and this white should look a little different to you. And that's because of the other shade, the color, affects how your brain interprets it. So now I'm going to do some reinterpretation. Now here, you see on his version, you never get that clean white anymore. But I'm going to, everything that's facing that left side directly is going to get some of that clean white. And there's just some simplifications when you're doing a cartoon as opposed to a painting. Ugh. You've got, there are simplifications. That's the whole thing about cartooning, is it's simplifying what you're looking at. And so, whereas my line drawing, I really am trying to get the feeling of the original, the coloring especially. I take lots of liberties so I can get the same feeling, same emotional feeling, without necessarily getting the same literal imagery. Here we go. What's going on in the chat? Something called Roll for Shoe was on Parlor Room on Dropout. Okay. Tell us more about Roll for Shoe. Was that a role-playing game without basic attribute stats? Roll for Shoe. Characters start without stats and gain skills by rolling high whenever they attempt checks. You know what? I've definitely seen other games that have done that. And I've also played in games where the DM just decided that everyone starts with the same basic spread, and as you do things, as you succeed, you get better at things, and that will determine what stats get better and what classes open up to you and what options you have. So not everyone is going to get to be a you don't start out as a wizard or a fighter or anything. You start out as a starting character, say. I mean, I don't remember whether there was a term that he had for it. But as you went along, as you got experience, you you got bonuses in certain things as you succeeded at them, and suddenly, well, you know what? You now have everything it takes to be a wizard, and you start getting those first first level uh, attributes and abilities. Hmm. Guess I don't really need that. That's going to be handled by darkness, not light. On the front side, I'm going to need it a little bit like that. Michael says he likes that, but that ignores the rule, or ignores. It's more like the real world idea of you only get better at something by failing at it. That's certainly not true in most role playing games. That's not true. You don't get better by failing at something. Look at anything like let's look at Call of Cthulhu, which is all skill based, and all improvement is based on succeeding at something. Failing at something gains you nothing. Now, in the real world, there's a lot of educational theory that that draws from this idea that the only way you get better at something is by trying it and failing it and learning what to do better next time. But I can't think of any games. That's not to say they're not out there, but I, off the top of my head, can't think of any games where what you want to do is try something and fail at it, because then you get better. You learn something, and the next time you're better at it. That's an interesting hook to try and build a game around. I'm not sure how people will react to that. And it all depends on how you design your game, but I think there's an extent that people do want, particularly if once you've figured out what your character is and what they do, you want them to succeed and get better. And what if what you're talking about, Michael, continues to be the case? Then characters who go out and succeed at everything, your heroes, your conquering heroes, will go out and will never get any better, or will not get better. Having a successful campaign might get them treasure, and maybe that's the trade-off, right? If you succeed, you get treasure. If you fail, you get better at the thing you're trying to do. You get better at the thing you're failing to do, so that you can hopefully succeed and get treasure. That's an interesting. It's an interesting idea to play around with. It certainly plays into another idea that I have toyed around with and never found a good way to execute, which is a game where you are uh, It's the best way to describe it. If you think about, it's like powering up in computer games. In order to do your big punch, you need to power. You need to soak up a bunch of power that you get by, I don't know, in some computer games. As you hit your target, you gain you have a bar, a measurement of how much, let's just call it oomph, you have. And hitting something gains you oomph. You gain a little oomph. You gain a little oomph. You hit them with your jab. Think about it from a boxing standpoint, right? Jab gets you oomph. In order to do an uppercut, you need 15 oomph, and uh, oomph is also what you what you soak up hits you take with. So you can't, if you spend it all and then you get hit, well, you're just going to go down because you had no oomph. But so you got to build up more oomph, and that's why you want to do these little attacks. Why would you want to do a small attack when you can do a big attack? Because that's the best way to win. You got to do a small attack, small attack, small attack, big attack. Um, Now, of course, that boxing analogy is very simple application. I've thought about trying to find ways to use that kind of thing to simulate things like superhero uh, games. The question of, if Spider-Man can do this crazy special effect, why can't he? Why doesn't he do it all the time? And the answer is that he has to have enough. Again, just to use the term that I'm using right now, oomph, in order to do it. And he doesn't at the start of the fight. He's got to beat up some thugs so he can have enough oomph to take on Dr. Octopus. And kind of just figuring that out for a role-playing game, a tabletop game, so that you are I can't erase that because this is all now on one layer. You want to build it up. The term I was using for this, as in some of the one, at least one of the um, iterations that I was working on, was a steam engine RPG, because you had to build up, instead of oomph, I was talking about it as steam. You need to have enough steam in order to do it. So it would certainly be, and it would certainly be reasonable. And I know that I had at least one version of it where I was messing around with failing. You didn't have to succeed; you just had to try. So you did learn by failing, and sometimes you got more oomph by trying something big and failing at it than you did from doing something small and failing at it. Let's see. That's looking about right. I don't know that we need to add a third layer. Certainly feels about right for that Belgoi. Can we call it Moxie or Chutzpah? You sure could. I don't see why not. It's your version of the game now. You want to call it something that is suitable for the game. I chose oomph just now because it's super generic. I chose steam in the other one because it fit the metaphor that I wanted people to understand. Right, the idea of building up enough steam, literally. But calling it moxie, calling it chutzpah, um, that works absolutely. I'm kind of liking oomph right now. Steam is Matthew says Steam is good. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to capture that concept in a word. Let's say it, you pick the one that you like best or the one that suits the feeling that you want for your game. Like Moxie sure wouldn't work if you didn't want to have that kind of pulpy feeling. Moxie is a really kind of pulpy word. You want your characters to have a lot of moxie. Um, Steam would work, particularly if it's a game where you want to have even lighter than that. There we go. Uh, if you're doing like a Victorian game, right, then it's just literally Steam engine. You want to do a have it have that feeling of being steampunk. uh, oomph certainly sounds appropriate for something like a superhero game or just a scrappy fighter game. Find the one that works. Yeah, I've toyed around with at least 4 or 5 different versions of that. My brain really likes the idea of a game that you are. There's so many games that you want to. I've talked to so many the people that have worked on Star Wars games, um, where the question always comes up: why don't the Jedi do X, Y, or Z? Because we see them do that in the movie, or in the movie, why don't they just do that all the time? And you've got, well, you don't have to, but it helps if you're making this game to put in some kind of mechanical reason why don't they do the thing which seems like the obvious choice. And the answer is they don't have enough resources to do it. What do you call them? How do you make that work? Well, that's where the game design comes in. I think this needs to be even darker. That's not working right. Not showing up. This one of those things in working digitally. I do often talk about the fact that you need to be careful when, because you can zoom in so much. There's a tendency sometimes to add in more details that you need. That when you zoom out to the size that it's going to be seen, they just fade together because you can see them so clearly up this close, and they shrink when it goes down to that close. Similar thing is that colors, lighter colors, seem more to stand out more if you zoom in and you zoom out. It's like, well, I can't see that anymore. The differentiation doesn't happen. I spent 10 midichlorians. Maybe that's what a midichlorian is. Um, David Shepard said the other downside to going to the true afterlife in Ghost Walk. Where were we talking about? Oh, I missed that. One of the downsides to going to the true afterlife in Ghost Walk is your PC goes into a state where they can't gain XP. That's absolutely true. I was I an editor or a developer on Ghost Walk? I don't remember. Anyway, I did some work on Ghost Walk. It's a fun concept. But yes, that's certainly one of the advantages of in Ghost Walk is if your character dies, they don't die. Right? You're not out of the game, but you go into this other state of being where, as David points out, well, the upside is your character can come back. The downside is that when you're in that state, you don't gain any XP. All right, I think he's looking. I think that skin is looking pretty good. Let's move on to this dark hood. Now, the challenge here in the original painting, again, we zoom in close enough, it really just seems like a flat color. But because I'm not going to that dark and I went to the brown, we've now got to add more detail. It was not necessary in the original. It needs to be darker than that. Yeah, like I say, the talking with people who've worked on the several different of the D20 versions of Star Wars, that kind of question of how do you give Jedi the cool stuff that they get in the movie without making them unstoppable and letting them be able to use it over and over and over again. I first encountered this uh, mechanically in a game about professional wrestling. I can't remember the name of the game itself. It's a fairly small press. This was in the early 90s. And you'd build your character and you'd build their special moves. And the challenge was that it didn't really have a good restriction to keep you from just using your best special moves over and over if you got advantage in the fight. And um, you know, what do you want the wrestler to be able to do their special move, but you don't want them to be able to just do it over and over and over again and win the fight. And I think that game, whatever the name of that game was, I think I enjoyed it because it was fun to make the wrestlers. Making characters was fun, and coming up with their special moves and figuring out what the power was. You know, the costs were. Uh, I made a lot of characters, but I found that when I tried to play it, it just wasn't fun because if you got to the point where you had advantage and you could use your special move and you built a good secondary move. Very often it was a setup power move, setup power move, and if you got to the point where you could do that, you where your power move was enough to stun your opponent for one round, then you could just repeat it, right? Set up power move, he's stunned. Set up power move, he's stunned, and it's over, and that was no fun. So kind of the same thing with the Jedi, same thing with superheroes. You want to find a way where they need to play the game, right? They need to go through some process in order to be able to use their big moves. The weird White Wolf Street Fighter game. That was that was the same era. The same era. Uh, I remember playing that when I was in Japan. That was a weird game. And that was also, like I say, that was absolutely the time when that wrestling game came out, because I was playing with it at the same time. I was playing around with it at the same time. I think we found, I'm trying to remember, but I think we found that the the Street Fighter game was more, uh, it was harder to build an abusive character, but it also just wasn't fun to play. And so, more than weird, our problem with it was it wasn't fun. And I'll tell you, going back to my Epic Tales game that I was showing you earlier, when I was playtesting it uh, at Gamehole Con last year, and if I'd gotten to playtest it uh, at Page, what I was testing for was fun, because I knew it worked mechanically. Like it's a simple. There's no question as to whether or not mechanically that game works. Question is whether or not it's fun to play, because I've had several, uh, particularly uh, rules light games that I've come up with, and I'm like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that, and some of them have been the ones where those power up, the Steam engine style thing. I said I don't want another level of blue on him, but I'm looking at his back and thinking that we need at least one more. It may be this on this very far end is probably the only place we need it, but we do need it. Yeah. Yeah. Michael says his first board game design worked absolutely perfectly, but it was boring as bleep. Yep. My first game design, same thing. And it was the very first game I ever designed was a, a tennis simulation, a tennis game, and it worked. And it was so boring I didn't want to play it, but it worked. I'm kind of glad that that happened. Actually, it taught me very early the the importance of the fun factor. I think a lot of game designers who are who turn out to be good at it from an early stage uh, have a hard time. It's a hard lesson to learn, um, because your head is so far down on does it work and getting the mechanics right and getting the math right. Right? You wanted to do this, and you, as a designer, you can see the elegance of what you've done, and you understand. This is look, it does this and it does that, and it's beautiful. And you just sometimes you need to step back, or you need someone to make you step back and look at it, look at other people, and are they having fun? Because that's the most important thing in making any game. David says it was so boring I didn't want to play it. It's kind of funny, probably frustrating at the same time. Well, yeah, I mean, I was very young at the time. As uh, younger than 15 when I designed that. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I I didn't understand. I didn't understand that I thought that it didn't work. Right? It was only in hindsight, looking back at that experience, I was like, oh no, it worked. It just wasn't fun. I put it together, and when I played it, it wasn't fun. I thought, well, I've done it wrong. Um, like I say, thankfully, I learned that lesson pretty quickly, but not immediately. David Shepard, that reminds me of a bumped into a designer and thanked them for working on a book I wrote, and they said that was the worst product I ever made. Wait, do they mean that was the worst product you ever made, or the worst product they ever made? All right, we've got another funny thing going on here. There's some texture on this cloak that I don't think I'm going to put on it. Just too much detail. Like I say, I've said before, you're. Crikey. I want to use that color, that same color. Now here's one of those do I use the same color questions. Because right now it's going to get confusing between. I'm using the same color from the inside of the cloak to highlight the shadow on the outside of the cloak. And that's going to get a little confusing. But when I do shadow on the inside of the cloak, the confusion will stop. Or so I'm convincing myself. Yeah, it'd be one thing if your editor or the person who worked on it came up and said you worked on something and they said to you that was the worst product you ever made. Uh, and then you could have a conversation about that. If they come up to you and say that was the worst product I ever worked on, well, wow. Just kind of have to walk away and go, oh boy, sorry. Hmm. If someone wants to tell me that any one of my products they think is the worst product I ever made, I think there's a conversation to be had there. All right. Well, why did you think so? Or really, you didn't think it was as bad as this other one? But if someone comes up and tells me something that I gave them was the worst thing they ever worked on, then I feel like, oh boy, I. You mean even everything that that other guy who I don't have any respect for gave you was better than that? Wow. Yes, I'm thinking of actual names in there, and no, I won't tell you what they are. Oh yeah, I certainly have had the experience of having walked away and thinking, well, that thing I did really wasn't very good, and then later meeting someone who loved it a lot. I would never tell them that. I would never say something like that was the worst thing I ever did, because then you're saying that thing you love stinks. I don't care that I did it. That thing you love stinks, and you shouldn't love it because it's bad. But yeah, I've had people come up to me and tell me that they really loved a thing that I did that I don't love. It's a one of the challenges that not every game designer is up for is interacting with fans. It's just the social aspect of it, the how to be a gracious, uh, for want of a better word, celebrity. And you find that in actors too, right? People who are really good at acting but bad at interacting with fans or real people. And very often you wind up walking away from those interactions and thinking, man, the guy whose work I like is a jerk. He may not be a jerk, but they're just not cut out uh, for dealing with fans. They just want, people who want their work to stand on its own and never have to answer questions about it or talk to people who love it who will want to drill deep. Don't ask me for more questions. Watch the movie and find your own answers. I want to interact with you, my favorite actor, dude. I want to talk to you, game designer whose work I love. And not everyone needs to be good at every part of the job, but it's really kind of the problem with it, or a problem in fandom is when the the people who create the things you like don't turn out to be as good for you as the thing they made. You want to love them as much as you love their thing. They may not make that possible for you. I met a couple of different uh, comic book people whose work I love, and my interactions with them were terrible, bad to terrible. Um, Now, in at least one of the cases, they were having a bad day, and I understand that that happens to everyone, but it still meant my interaction with them was awful. I do try and keep those things in mind when I go to a convention or do any kind of appearance, any kind of public thing. Right, the people that I'm going to meet are excited and they love the thing, and I should be helping them to love it more. That's my job on that day. I'd say I think about those bad experiences I had, and particularly the ones that I know the person was just having a bad day, and I try and remember that no matter what happens, no matter what crappy thing might happen to me today, I need to remember that the next person I meet is still there to try and enjoy the thing, to share the joy they get out of the thing I did. Ooh, look what happened here. Um, Michael says, sorry you missed last Thursday's show. You know what? You might have missed last Thursday's show, but the chat was out. I couldn't chat with anyone. So, for all I know, you could have been there. I was not able to see what anyone wrote. It was just me drawing and talking. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's good. Probably not. But in any case, apology accepted. You are forgiven. Not that you ever needed any forgiveness, and nor did I need an apology. I'm so thankful for you folks that show up all the time. The folks who are in the chat right now. I think everyone in the chat who is engaging. I know that we've got. I'm gonna look up here and see. We've got about a dozen people watching. We've got about 5 people who are part of the active conversation, and that's fine. People who are just watching, I'm not slagging you. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you guys too. But folks that are here, I really appreciate that and chat and regularly chat. I really appreciate it. Helps me, right? It helps make this show entertaining for those other 6 to 7 people or more, or anyone who's watching it later. Right? You guys being part of the conversation helps me be more entertaining and helps this show be more entertaining for more people. So thank you kindly. So let's see what we got here. Michael says, I told Phil Jimenez that a Wonder Woman piece he did was great, and he immediately responded with, I hated that piece. He went on to explain why, and it was constant editorial interference and redos. Yeah, well, I get it. I mean, I get that. But I think that it's a shame that I mean, I think there's a better way to tell that story. I don't know. I don't hear that. You haven't told me the tone of voice. Like if he told that as a joking, so wow, you know what? That piece was a bear, and I don't have the love you have for it because these things happen. That seems like a great interaction. If it was, I love this piece, is like, oh, I hate that piece. That just seems like a. Uh, I feel bad for you, Michael. You know what? And I've met Phil Jimenez a couple of times. Super nice guy, and it has to have been something that really struck home, or he was having a bad day, because I can't see him doing that in most cases. But yeah, I totally see that. So that. Like I say, there are things that I've done that I don't think are great. But if someone comes up and tells me that they love this thing, I try and find something nice to say about it. Or at worst to say, wow, you know, that was a really tough thing, and my memories of those times aren't great, but I'm glad you love it. Dave Shepard says, I met some designers who don't like it if people buy their stuff to raid from it instead of using it as intended. But a sale is a sale. Yeah, well, you know what? I know people who don't like that too. You know what? I I this thought is getting more complicated in my head, so I'm going to pause before I say it. I did find it pretty funny when I heard that a lot of the TSR turned WotC artists got annoyed with management wanting to put Regdar on everything, so had to Pete. Yeah, Regdar. I can tell that story a little bit. I've had that experience with 85% of people. This is Injun Joe says, had that experience with 85% of people. Then I realize they can take me as I am, and if they're listening to someone else come to a conclusion about me, I don't need to engage with them. Yeah, fair enough. Parasocial relationships are a hell of a drug. Yeah, it is. It's a weird thing, the parasocial relationship. Uh, that you feel like you know someone because you've interacted with them online. Um, when you're in the shallower end of the fame pool, the interactions are closer to actual social interactions. They're not the same. They're still parasocial, but it's closer. The the more the more people that I would have, like if this show was super popular and I had hundreds of people coming in and leaving messages and exchanging with them, my interaction with any of them would be paper thin. As it is, you folks who are here every week that I talk with every day, all right, we're not friends because I don't know you. I know you here, but we are. We have. I do. You're more than just, hey, a guy left a message. No, David Shepard left a message. Chris Andrew left a message. Michael in chat. Michael, I met at the convention and we talked. Michael moved to the next step on the run. We are not friends, but we're associates. I know him. I know who he is. He's someone that is not just a generic interactor, right? It's a weird thing, right? It's weird for on both sides. It's weird to get your head around it as the the, the guy on the fame side, and it's hard. I know. Same thing for me when I interact with folks whose work I like, particularly if I'm bringing someone like I'm in the industry. Let me chat with them. I'm still just a person unless they happen to know me and my work, and they have some feeling about it already. Like we are, we colleagues. You don't have to feel that way for sure. And but they may. Who knows? I had a strange one today. You know what? I had a strange one just today. In that, I left a message I made a post on Facebook where artist whose work I like a lot, who I took a class with. His name is Tom Richmond. He's a caricaturist and cartoonist who does a lot of work for Mad Magazine and a lot of other big name clients. He's a big deal. One-time head of the National Cartoonist Society, among other things, and super nice guy. And I've met him on a number of occasions. But I know that I made a post about his something he put online today, and when he left a comment, it took me a while to try and process and figure out, all right, is this like an actual comment from a friend, or is this him giving a reply to a fan? Like, I know he knows who I am. I've met him on a number of other occasions, and he's recognized me. We've had conversations. That doesn't make me his friend. It doesn't mean I'm in his life or I have anything more than a 3 level deep parasocial association with him. Uh, um, it's weird. Like, it's really weird. It's something that is you just have to think of, you just have to bear it in mind and understand that things are always, or very likely always, going to have a little bit of confusion, a little bit of uncertainty, and try not to make assumptions. At least, particularly, try not to make assumptions that you and anyone else are closer than the than you necessarily are. Chris Andrew, I would love to meet you someday too. Let's say and you know, another thing a lot of people do, and I'm guilty of this too. I say, you know what? I consider you people my friends, and I mean that to a certain level of friendship. And that sounds snooty and full of myself, right? I don't mean you're the kind of. I don't mean I consider you friends like I'm going to invite you over for dinner, but although who knows, maybe I might. Um, uh, but like people who you take, people at college who are in your class, but that you are not in your dorm, or that you only see in the classroom. Right? You might consider them friends in that you know them, and if you were to see them on campus, you would say hi. But if they were to come up to you and say, "Hey, you want to give me $20?" You go, "Who the hell are you to ask me for $20? Why should I give you who? Uh, you're in my European literature class." That kind of assumption of a step too far happens a lot online, and that's where a lot of people get in emotional trouble. David Shepard says there's an awesome quote in Red Dwarf where Arnold Rimmer says, "Over the years, I have come to think of you as you all as people I met." Yeah. Chris Andrews says, "Play a game at a convention, friend? Yes. Donate a kidney for? No. Yeah, yeah." And there are finer slices of that same thing. Yeah, yeah. Look at this. We are over 2 hours. I'm still going good. Let's keep going. I'm not done with this guy yet, and I haven't. So I don't think I'm going to get to any of the background today, but I think we might be able to finish this guy, the Belgoi himself, in flats and details. Yeah, I mean, it's weird, this whole parasocial relationship. I certainly, in my lifetime, I've made a lot of parasocial interaction mistakes of, assuming closeness beyond what was actually happening in the situation. I'm not saying terrible things happened, but this was certainly before I became a person that was on this end of it. But you know what? I've even done that after that. I've caught a few of those where I look back and I go, "Wow, yeah, I totally screwed that up." Heh. Oh well. Do better next time. It's tough. It's not an easy situation to figure out. Turns out people are complicated. again, I was having a instant message chat with someone uh, that is in one of those realms of more than someone I know just online, someone I've met in person, someone I know in person, someone I've been at dinners with. I haven't had one-on-one dinners with, but someone I know and is part of my extended circle. Um, and and it's not this, and nothing bad happened, right? There's no bad side to this, but I was surprised um, when that conversation came up, and it was a fine conversation. There's nothing wrong with any of it. If you are the person, if the person who I'm talking about ever ends up watching this, don't get freaked out about it. I'm not trying to make a point, and I'm not trying to say anything bad. But at first, when the conversation began, my thought was, it just seems strange that this person is coming to me with that, and I thought like, no, 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 not strange. Let's go. Let's have this conversation. Um, Again, if the person who that happened to ever ends up here, and I can tell you right now, as far as I know, they're not here now. So if you're thinking it's you right now, it's not you. Um, unless you're one of the lurkers, then theoretically it could be you. Uh, God, I suck. Um, I'm so mean. Yeah, no, let's say it turned out it was just me doing a, a gut check. And my gut check was, yep, all good. But you just don't know, right? And the thing today with Tom Richmond, um, I could not be sure that I was reading the tone of his responses correctly because I don't know him actually in person well enough to have that kind of relation. I was afraid that I had perhaps insulted him. It turns out it does not seem to me that that is the case. Uh, but yeah, parasocial situations. What you gonna do? That's a weird subject. How did I let this go on and on and on? Let's talk about something more fun. There's another problem with this kind of open-ended live streaming, where particularly where I've got my head down and there's no one else talking but me, so I keep talking. One of the reasons why I'm good at doing this kind of show, because I'll just keep talking, but I can get myself in trouble doing it. Um, let's see what's going on here. Uh, do, do, do. All right. Now, fine things to say, not worth reading out loud because it will perpetuate this conversation that I'm trying to segue out of. Hmm. So let's see, what else? What else can I say? What can we chat about? I do not get, I do not subscribe to HBO, but I've been very excited about the Lanterns show that premiered 2 weeks ago. And because I don't have it, and I don't think I'm going to be able to see it in anytime soon, I don't worry about spoilers unless I'm about to see something right now, because uh, because I being surprised is about what's happening is not as important to me as how being surprised about a story is not as important to me as to how well the story is told. Right? That's what I like. That's why I can rewatch many times over movies that I've seen, or reread books or comics. It's not. I don't need. I know some people who, when they do that, it's like I can't watch it. I already know what's going to happen. Most of the time, I already knew it was going to happen anyway because stories are predictable. So what I like is how the story is told, how how the dialogue is written, um, how the actors performed. Right, I that's that's what I like. That's what I groove on, and so I rewatch stories, and so also if there's a something like Lanterns that I can't see, it's all right if I know what happens. Right? All right, there may be some super. Every once in a while, there's something which is so out of left field that you really need to be surprised before you can see it. But and you lose something if you go into it already knowing the secret. There are situations like that, but in my experience, they're pretty rare. It's pretty rare that that's an important part of watching a story for me. So I very often, if I can't see something right away, I don't worry about getting spoilers, and in fact, I very often dive into watching clips and opinion pieces about them. Um, and uh, sorry, I'm stopping to look at the Belgoi and decide if there's anything else that really needs work on him, and I don't think there is. Think that's him done. Well, now I'm gonna try and do this the the outcropping that he's standing on also, uh, but I don't think I'm gonna go back and do any of the background pieces. In fact, I think I may turn those on now that we've got this in there. So this is him standing in front of the background. Let's start with the rocks themselves and then do the skulls. Um, Michael says they changed some basic canonists. I expected them to change. I mean, first of all, Green Lantern canon has changed so much over the course of how long I've been reading it that that in itself is not a knock on anything. In fact, like anyone who's been a fan for a long time, there are still parts of canon that has been rewritten that I like better than the new version. So I don't mind if you're going to rewrite this stuff I didn't like as much. It's Hal Jordan as a being Hal Jordan at this stage in his career is something that we never got explored in the comics. It kind of it's the kind of thing that you can assume there was a phase where that was true, but we never got to see anything with it, and this show is exploring it again from everything I've been able to see and everything anyone I've read has said about it. Um, it's really good. All right, I think one thing I am going to do is make a different layer for for the stuff on the rocks, on the outcropping, it's going to have its own layer for shading. So I can play around with things that may or may not work and know that they will not interfere with any of the stuff I've already got down on the shade layer for the Belgoi. Yeah, it certainly is. The character of Hal Jordan in the comics um, has had a lot of weird things happen to him over the years, and but like I say, some of them lead you to assume that this kind of Hal Jordan must have existed somewhere, but we didn't get to see it. And likewise, I don't know that we ever got to see um, John Stewart, Green Lantern, John Stewart at this stage either. I don't remember where it was that I read the description that this is like Green Lantern seen through the lens of True Detective, which I think seems to be a very apt description of what the feeling of this show is like. And I tell you, I'm down for it. I'm very much looking forward to being able to see the the episodes in full. And like I say, it doesn't matter that I know the reveals, the secrets, the thing that's going to come up, and when you when you saw it the first time, it made you go, "Ooh, what?" Um, that sounded a little more snooty than I meant it to. Like it wouldn't have made me go that way. That's not what I meant. Um, the surprise aspect is cool, but it's a surprise to me now. I got that "Ooh, what?" feeling out of just seeing the clip of it. I didn't get the full emotional tag, true, but that's okay. If they do it well, then I'll enjoy it just as much. And if they didn't do it well, I wouldn't have gotten a big jar out of it, a big jolt out of it anyway. But again, having said all that, from what I've seen, this really looks like a good show. I should surprise no one, given my age and general knowledge about things I'm a fan of, that Hal Jordan was my Green Lantern. He was a Green Lantern. I I grew up on. Uh, I'm a fan of. Uh, all of the other Green Lanterns that have come since. I have some amount of, all right, yeah, they're good characters too, but they're not Green Lantern. Green Lantern is Hal Jordan. Michael says, enjoying the mystery of who the Manhunter is. Yeah, that's and that, like I say, I can enjoy in this proxy way, right? Even just watching the clips of the show, I'm still enjoying the hunt for the wonder of who is the Manhunter. And again, even if I know that, if the story is well told, I'll enjoy it on when I get to watch it eventually too, even if it's not a surprise. The mystery, the hunt, the exploration. Or if that's not the point, right? If that's just a side effect, then that's fine too. I think one of the problems sometimes detective shows have is they're written so that although the detective is definitely looking to solve the question, that's not, to the writer, that's not the point of the story. And so, uh, if as a watcher that is the most important thing to you, you're not going to enjoy the story as much as the writer wants you to because you want something different out of it. That's looking pretty good. I think this needs to be a little darker there. There we go. I'm going to add a second level of darkness like I did on the other bits too. But I think the biggest, one of the big questions I have in these situations where I'm watching something like this, uh, I I can't intellectually know which things are cliffhangers, right? I don't think in the long term the cliffhanger is important. The cliffhanger is only important when you're going week to week, interpreting or experiencing it for the first time. Um, on any rewatch, anything that's got a cliffhanger, the cliffhanger doesn't really matter, though sometimes it can be effective. I'll talk about that more in a second. Um, so that scene again, spoilers. I'm going to say right now, I'm going to talk about the Green Lantern, the Lanterns episode 2, the end of episode 2. If you don't want to hear, tune out for a little bit. Um, but the kind of the Sinestro scene, how it wraps up and what happens, and the spoiler, the cliffhanger feeling of that, didn't have a cliffhanger impact on me because it wasn't coming at the end of an hour of watching it and feeling, and then yeah, tune in next week. I missed that, but like I say, that is a first time viewing thing only, and if that's not the important part of the show, and I don't think it is, um, that's a get you to tune in next week kind of trick, not a this is an important part of the story trick. I forgot what I was going to say. I told you, I just said a second ago, I'm going to tell you more about that in a second, and I don't remember what it was about. Oh, Yes. Now I can think of a cliffhanger, like in now this is 30 years old, so I don't even feel bad about spoiler. But in Star Trek: The Next Generation, in the Best of Both Worlds, the Picard gets um, captured by the Borg two-parter, which was a cliffhanger over 2 seasons. The cliffhanger there was so well done that even though you know it's coming, even though it doesn't matter, even though you can watch them back to back, it's really effective. It's very effective and very uh, emotionally impactful. So you can, if you do a cliffhanger well like that, if you tell the story, uh, if you create the work of art, the movie or the story or the comic, so that the cliffhanger is done that well and it hits, it'll keep hitting even if you see it coming and even if you know what happens afterwards. The and that's my best example of that is the Best of Both Worlds Part 1 episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's such a good cliffhanger. It's such a good the end. Come back in the fall. Ah! um, Michael says there's nothing cliffhangery about Sinestro. Well, except that you want to know what he knows, right? It's definitely a cliffhanger in that you feel like there's more to that conversation that happens, and maybe it'll get shown at the start of the next episode. It probably won't. You're right, and to that extent, it's not a cliffhanger. but for an end of an episode to end that way with you wanting more, I think that still basically qualifies as a cliffhanger episode. I could be wrong. All right, let's draw some more. Let me draw some more. Hold on. Michael says, yeah, in the comics, John Stewart and Hal are kind of are not are about the same age, are roughly the same age, and in this clearly there is a generational difference. Let's see. Michael says to rewatch will be fun. Yeah, that's one of the things I do love about mysteries and of all sorts. The rewatch, and that's where you get to see if the filmmakers played fair, right? And by play fair, I mean they showed you everything you needed to know. You just didn't understand it enough to pick up on it, or did they actually not give you information you needed because they didn't want you to know? And when you go back the next time with the information, you go, "What about that? Why can't we see that? That should have been right there." From everything you say for the rest of the movie or series, and it's a hard thing to do, right? It's a super hard thing to execute on, and you understand why creators cheat it to one form or another because it's so hard to do. But when it's done well, like Ryan Johnson, director Ryan Johnson, the guy who does Knives Out among other things, Ryan Johnson is super good at playing fair. Right? When you watch a thing a second or third time, you can see, yep, it was there the whole time. I just didn't understand the meaning of it. Or I didn't know to look there. That's what I like even more, is when it's like, yep, it was right there on the screen, but because of the way this was shot, I was looking somewhere else at something else going on. But on my second watch through, I can sure look at it and say, yep, it's there the whole time. If I'd only been smart enough to know I needed to look in this other place. I'd have seen it. I could have solved the case too. And of course, in the Knives Out, there are parts where he does it better than other parts, or times when he does it better than other times. But on the whole, I think he plays fair just about all the time, and it's great on second and third viewings to look at it and say, "Yep, there it is." And I know that I missed it the first time around, and now I'm laughing at it. Chris Andrews says, nothing beat the board cliffhanger because Patrick Stewart's contract was up. Yeah, I mean, it really was. You didn't know. Maybe he is gone forever. Who knows? That's a real life cliffhanger. That's looking pretty good. I may want to come back and add more to that later, but I think that's about right. Look at that. Look at that. David says, I was about 12 when that Star Trek episode happened, and I remember that summer discussing what's going to happen. Yeah. Yeah. That was pretty awesome. All right, so now the question becomes, and I said this at the beginning, I laid down a flat white on these skulls, and they are almost all gray. But it's a different color than the Belgoi. So what color am I going to use for these skulls? One possibility is that I actually do them in yellow like the teeth, so they have that same bone quality, which would be very different from what's going on in the painting, in the original painting. Chris Andrews says, speaking of Next Generation, he's been enjoying the Jonathan Frakes and Brent Spiner podcast. I have too. I've been watching it and enjoying it. It's called Dropping Names, and the Reason being that they're all constantly saying names of celebrities, and every time they do, they ring a little bell because they're telling stories about their lives, and they meet celebrities all the time, and the people they're interviewing have met celebrities. Um, I think it's skulls are pink white. Not there, they're not. You mean in real life? Yeah. Well, uh, um, let's not talk about it. Just kidding. Yeah, they make a point on that show almost every episode to say this is not a Star Trek show, but so many of their stories are Star Trek related because so much of their history happened on Star Trek TV and movie sets. But yes, it's not. It's not technically a Star Trek related show. It's about working in the movie and TV industry more broadly. I see they released a new episode today where they talk with Tim Matheson, and I'm very excited to see that. All right. The question is, do I need to create even a new layer for the skulls? Well, no, we can do it on this one. I just need to make a decision. Let's start. Let's try the bone color, the bone kind of yellowish bone color first, and see how that feels. So I'm not going to let it get too close. Nope, nope. I'm already looking at that, and I don't like that. Yep, yep. I like that better. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't mean I'm not going to change my mind later, but I like that for a starting point, and so that's how we're going to start. Yeah, Tim Matheson, who's done so much work, and who goes all the way back to being the voice for Johnny Quest in the original Johnny Quest. And of course, earlier that wasn't his first work, but that's the first thing, the earliest work of his that resonates with me. Yeah, that's a good start. That's what we're going to use as our basic coloring. Anyway, I'm looking forward to listening to that Tim Matheson interview. I may put that on after this when I'm doing whatever I'm working on next, as long as it's not writing. Still got a lot of writing I need to do. I don't feel like I'm probably up for it this evening, but we'll see. We'll see. What do we got going on here? Uh, oh, we're still same thing. Yeah, so I'm with you, Chris Andrew. I totally recommend uh, um, dropping names. If you haven't watched it yet, folks, give it a try. Brent and Johnny dropping names. I find them. I find it very interesting watching them. Both of them are just different enough from how I imagined them that it's still entertaining all the time. Um, and you know what? So I'm trying to to describe how it is that they're different than I how to quantify what I just said so it means more or means something to anyone who isn't me. um, Frakes is more jaded than I would have uh, expected. I think that's a good way to put it. Um, and a lot more willing to drop an f bomb than I was. I was a little surprised by that. Not offended in any way, of course. Just a little surprised. And Spiner is just a little more um, emotionally fragile than I would have expected. It's things he carries around and things he worries about, and the number of things from his career that didn't happen that he kind of carries around, and or times that he feels he needs to point out, you know, by the way, I can do that thing. I just, he's a lot needier uh, emotionally than I would have expected. All right, those are looking pretty good. Let's go for another darker shade than that. And there are things you can count on coming up every episode, like the fact that Brent Spiner was in 1776. That comes up all the time. On the one hand, like I get it, he's super proud of that, and he wants, and a lot of people don't know what a good singer he is, and that he's done that kind of work. On the other hand, if I have to hear one more time that kind of like, did you know that I was in 1776? Because although Frakes clearly knows, not the guests often don't, and that's in that context that it comes up. So I go, yeah, I was in 1776. We know, Brent. We know. Chris says Spiner is nice though, and that's why Data was so beloved because of how his personality broke through. I think that's true. Yes, I do think Spiner is very nice. I think Frakes is very nice too. I think that he is more willing to just say screw it, like not as in he doesn't care, but here's what we're gonna do. Let's just do it. I guess in a kind of a Riker-esque kind of way. Also, since he's got so much experience working as a director, right? And it seemed a lot of points where that comes through in the willingness to just kind of make a call and say, okay, that's what we're going to do, and if you don't like it, well, sorry, but that's what we're going to do. Yeah, and like I say, I really like the show. I was just recommending it to two different people earlier this week, people who I think would love it and haven't seen it yet. So this skull all the way on the right is the one that I'm having the most problem with. I've shaded it kind of like the way I see the light coming in this drawing, but it's so different from how it is in the other one. I'm feeling a little uncertain about that, and so much so that I think I'm going to come in here and change it a lot. I think I'm going to need a third level of gray just for this skull. Do any of you? So I'd say Tim Matheson, guest this week, and I'm excited about that. I really like Tim Matheson. Uh, from certainly from Animal House, certainly, but I definitely tie back to the Johnny Quest thing a lot. A big Johnny Quest fan. Johnny Quest premiered uh, about 10 days before I was born. So certainly everything I've ever seen Johnny Quest on was a rerun. But I feel like I don't know why, but that just makes me feel some kind of connectedness to it. Johnny Quest and I are about the same age. I mean, not Johnny Quest, but the show. I don't know. I'm an idiot sometimes. And the West Wing, of course. I think that's another place where I really came to appreciate him. He had a small but important role in the West Wing. And it wasn't tiny, but he was certainly not one of the regulars, except in seasons where he became important. I think I'm going for a fourth layer of white here, or blue here. Darker than that. Yeah, I like that better. That's looking good. Let's see. Midnight time. Oh my God, it is. It's 9 o'clock here. Well, Michael, thank you for hanging out this late. I appreciate it. We've been going here 3 hours. I usually don't go quite that long. I'm gonna roll up with the I'm gonna finish these. Once I get these spikes done, I'll be done, and I'm gonna close it up for the evening. So you're not gonna miss much more. Michael, thank you for hanging out. Always glad to see you. It's, David says, as long as I don't need 50 Shades of Grey, I should have nothing to worry about. Good point. Well said. All right, Michael, go and get some sleep, and if things work out, I'll see you tomorrow night for Random Encounters, the Random Encounter Show, which is tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. For those of you who don't know, I know you know, Michael. I think this shade of gray I've just picked here is not dark enough. I have to go back and do all of those again. Yep, that's better. And hopefully some of these, some of these I will be able to drop fill, just kind of do it in other than if it touches any other color on this layer, I can't just drop fill it. So that one, probably okay. That one's okay. This one, probably not. No, that one's okay. Good. These two will be okay. This one will be okay. Oh, nope. It won't. This one should actually be thicker. And then I need one even darker version. Not a lot of them need it, but this one will. You'll need it a little bit. You'll need it in spots. Just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. There we go. All right. Okay. We're gonna call that good for this. So that's a good amount, right? 3 hours. But we got the main character all done, all not just flat colored, but colored. All I have to do, and I say that in air quotes, all I have to do is the background now, because our main character is done. I think that's probably going to be another 2 hours work. Maybe less. Possibly a little more. But I think probably a little under 2 hours to get the rest of that done. And I'll hopefully find some time to do that maybe over the weekend. Anyway, I'll let you know that I will finish this up on my time. Um, this almost certainly won't be what we're working on next Wednesday. I'm not sure what's going to happen next Wednesday. What I had planned is not going to happen, so I'm going to have to fill in with something else. But then I think the following week, I'm going to have something interesting for you. We're going to have some guests, and we're going to have a project, and I'm going to have my first sponsor for this show, which will be a little. It's a sponsor I think you'll like. So thank you all. Thank you all for hanging out with me for 3 hours. For those of you who stuck the whole time, I think we're down to just the people in chat, or I don't know. We're down to about 5 or 6 people who are watching from our height of 12 to 15. But that's all right. It's been 3 hours. Who the heck hangs out to watch me drawing for 3 hours? Crazy people like you. I love you, crazy people. Thank you all for hanging out. It has been terrific. I've gotten a lot done. I'm happy with it. When it's finished, I will, the very first people to see it. Well, no, I'll show some friends first. But the very first people beyond my immediate circle of friends will be the folks who are subscribed to 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. And that's it's a free subscription. I'm not saying you need to pay anything. If you are a free subscriber to 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com, you will be among the people who get to see this free. You'll also be the people who can right now download the coloring book version of this. So it's a pretty good deal for free. Go ahead and check it out. 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com. Also, if you like my stuff and you've been hanging around this long, you find me fascinating, maybe you want to join my Patreon. There is also a free level of that, so don't let that stop you. Patreon.com/Stannex. STANNEX. It's like annex with a st, not Stan with an X. Patreon.com/Stannex. And people there get to... they also get to see a lot of this... Well, they'll get to see this earlier than most people. People in the in the newsletter will get to see it first. Patreon members will get to see it second. Patreon members also get the coloring book or the coloring pages, and everything I put out publicly, I make sure that you get to see it. It'll show up in your email inbox, so you don't have to try and hunt it down online. You won't worry that I've drawn something and shared it with the world and you don't get to see it. If it's out there, I will bring it to you. And there are other things. Let's say there is a free level. There are also paid levels which have some fun rewards. So check it out. If you are looking for a new monthly subscription, as it were, check it out. Also, I mentioned this earlier. I have a new crowdfunding project which is getting ready to launch. If you go over to littlewitchwillow.com, it'll take you to the pre-launch page for what's going to be a backer kit campaign to let me print this children's book I did in physical format. So go ahead and check it out. If you want to know about Little Witch Willow, I'll tell you that in September, I'm going to be posting the pages one a day to my social media. So you'll be able to see it then. And of course, each day will also come with a gentle reminder that you could come and join the backer kit. You could get a copy of it for your own if you come and pay for it. A reasonable amount. All right. Well, there we go. That is that. littlewitchwillow.com. Boing. All right. Clearly, after 3 hours, it's time for me to take a break and refill my soda and, I don't know, take the rest of the evening off, probably. Thank you all for coming. So glad you were here. I will be back tomorrow night with a new episode of Random Encounters, the improv cartooning show, and I hope you can join me then. Otherwise, I'll be back next Wednesday with something or other. Even I don't know exactly what it'll be yet. You know what? It won't be 3 hours worth. I'll tell you that much. Won't be 3 hours worth, but it will be fun. So until then,